If you go back in time in the history of computer sound, you may be familiar with an infamous device known as the Roland Multi-Timbre Sound Module MT32, or for short, Roland MT32. This is the same Roland that made digital keyboards, drum kits, and the Roland Aerophone. The MT32 was the holy grail of musical synthesis, so much so that it cost $695,1987. Thanks, inflation. Back then, nobody, well maybe except this guy, could afford such a thing. Back in the day, kids just used the internal PC speaker. Games that used this PC speaker didn't have any music, just sound effects. There's so much you could do with a one-voice speaker that makes nothing but beeps and boops. Maybe you had an Ad-Libs FM synthesizer card, which sounded like this. Or maybe you heard of the Sound Blaster card. You see, MIDI synthesizers like the MT32 are expensive things. And I say are because they're still really expensive, but they aren't as expensive as they were before. They mostly exist in the form of a digital instrument, but that's besides the point. Now you can find an MT32 or maybe a sound canvas on eBay, but is that really all the MIDI devices you can use when playing it on an MS-DOS machine? I really don't have the time for a MIDI synth device like the MT32 since really, I don't play DOS games that much. So I try to do something creative. Now I've owned this Casio Privia PX800 digital piano for as long as I can remember. It really feels and sounds like a real piano. That's mostly to do with the fact that every instrument on a MIDI device nowadays is all PCM sampled. This means the instrument samples were recorded using real instruments. In this case, the grand piano sample would have been recorded using a real grand piano. To better understand what I'm talking about, here's the note C on the piano instrument in FM synthesis. Now here it is in PCM. Of course they didn't record every individual note. No, the sound is just modified when the key is pressed. That's not all this piano can do. Right underneath the actual keys is this little box that has 3 connectors, MIDI in and MIDI out, for connecting to synthesizers like the aforementioned MT32, and USB MIDI for connecting to modern computers so you can jam out a GarageBand on your Mac or something. I started to wonder, since this instrument has MIDI ports and USB MIDI in, could it work in DOSBox? And how does it sound? Well, the answer to those questions are yes and not great. I think maybe this has to do with the fact that most DOS games from back in the day was meant to utilize Roland's MIDI devices instead of plain old general MIDI. In fact, if you look at the installation software for any DOS game, you'll notice that it lists Roland MT32 or something similar to that. So anything from a Casio or Yamaha or what have you will sound really bad. Now here's the part where I demonstrate some stuff. Excuse the bad visuals, it was kind of dark out when I recorded this stuff, but that's not the point. Notice that when you connect the piano to a computer, it shows US.E on the screen. This stands for USB enabled. So if you were to disconnect the piano while it's still turned on, it would say US.D, and no, that doesn't stand for US dollars, but USB disabled. First off, we have Ultima 6. One thing I'd like to mention is that this game has a built-in sound test on the title screen. If you press one of the numbers, it plays a different tune. So here's Boot Up. If you're paying close attention, this was the music that was playing in the background at the beginning of this video. That was the MT32 version. So here's the PX800 version. here's character creation. And here's introduction. Okay, so that was Ultima 6. Now here's The Secret of Monkey Island. Finally, here's Maniac Mansion, Day of the Tentacle. This is immediately one of the better sounding games, because right out of the box, it supports both Roland and general MIDI. Another thing that's also worth noting is that since everything is PCM sampled, everything from the clarinet, the flute, the oboe, and the rest of the instruments are all realistic. Though the birds actually come from the bird sound in general MIDI, so that may sound a bit odd when played on this piano.
I'm thirsty. I don't think you should drink that. It looks bad for you. Nonsense. It makes me feel great. Smarter, more aggressive. I feel like I could. Like I could. Like I could. Take on the world.
Look, Odie, it's a hamster. Just need for dissection lab tomorrow.
I think I need that for the band, Laverne. You know, like we can line its head off or whatever.
Hands off that hamster.
Friend of yours, Bernard?
He belongs to Weird Ed Edison, and it looks like he's brought us a note. It's from my old friend, Green Tentacle. He says that Purple Tentacle's mutated into an insane genius, and Dr. Fred's going to kill them both. I thought I was free of Dr. Fred and those crazy Edisons forever. But now, I know that I must go back to the mansion.
So what's the lesson we learned here? Well, if you don't really want to spend some money on a fancy MIDI synth and got a MIDI keyboard lying around, grab yourself a cable or two, and you've got a somewhat viable alternative. That's all from me. Thanks for watching.